Good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the first speaker session of ByteVerse on Android development domain, our exciting hackathon event. Today, we have Mr. Srijan Shovit from third year NIT Patna as co-host for our session. We are thrilled to have each and every one of you join us today as we embark on a journey of innovation, creativity, and problem solving. Byteverse is not just a competition, it is a platform for you to showcase your talent, work collaboratively, and bring your ideas to life. We know that each one of you has a unique perspective, and we are excited to see how you leverage your skills and creativity to address real world challenges. During the next 10 days, you will have the opportunity to work on a range of challenges by developing new software applications. You will have access to top-notch resources, mentors, and experts to help you guide and support you throughout the event. We are confident that you will be amazed at the level of innovation, collaboration, and problem solving that emerges from this event. Whether you are an experienced coder or a newcomer to the hackathon, we encourage you to take a risk, learn, and have fun. Now, I would like to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. Aman Singh, who is an expert in Android development and is currently a software engineer at Microsoft. He is working on Microsoft To Do client, which is itself going through a interesting transition from native to React Native. We are honored to have them share his insights and knowledge with us. His accomplishment and contribution to Android development have been widely recognized, and we are privileged to have the opportunity to learn from them today. Today's session promises to be insightful, informative, and thought provoking. As he shares his experience and expertise, we have the opportunity to expand our understanding of Android development and gain new insights into this dynamic and ever evolving era. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Aman Singh sir for his willingness to share his knowledge with us. We are truly grateful for his presence here today. So, without any further delay, let's move to our speaker who will give a brief introduction about himself and will share his journey in Android development. So, Aman Singh sir, over to you.
Hello, folks. Thanks, Sajid. Like that was an awesome introduction. Although you have already introduced, I'll just redo it. I'm Aman Singh, and I am graduated from Army Institute of Technology, Pune. And currently, I'm working at Microsoft. That's my first job, and I'm working on a product called Microsoft To Do and the Android client of it. Uh, and in the context of this session, the we are we at Microsoft To Do, the Android client, is itself going through a transition of moving from a native client to a React Native client. And moving forward, I'll introduce you to what are the advantages of that and what's the reason we are going through that transition. So, since we'll have a very brief session about introduction Android development. I'll probably show you a roadmap and try to guide you through the right path where I fumbled, so that you don't make the same mistakes, and at least you know the options you have available for the choices you are gonna take forward learning Android. So, folks, do I start with the Android thing? So, Sajid,
Yes, yes, sir, please start.
okay, I'll be sharing my screen now. Okay, just give me a check. My screen is visible. Folks.
Yes, sir. It's
Okay.
visible.
Okay. So, by the way, a trivia that I myself created this list of items which we are going to discuss today by using ChatGPT, which I'm a very huge fan of in general about machine learning and AI. Okay, coming straight to the topic, the very first thing we're going to discuss is wha- uh, what do you do? Like, do you do React Native or Flutter or itself native Android? Currently, Microsoft To Do is built on native Android client, and we are going to a transition from React Native. And the reason is First of all, since you might be aware that React Native and Flutter are cross client, the the applications built on these platform are cross client. I mean, you could use the same code base for iOS as well as Android. And for native development, you have to write code for Android, and then you have to write code for iOS itself. So, for from a college student's perspective, what would I recommend? React Native or a native Android? We are not going to consider Flutter because Flutter, I'm myself not aware about Flutter, but Flutter is something I've not worked on. So the reason we are going through this transition is because, see, when you have native clients for iOS is a different client, Android is a different client, and then you have a web client, and then you have a Windows client. So all these clients are going to need different resources. A team is going to manage one client, and another team is going to manage another client. But if you write your code in React Native, and if your app is in React Native, so a, a single team writes a code and it's going to run in all the platforms. So it saves a hell lot of resource for your company. And yeah, so this was about React Native key. So it's pretty ironic that since this session is about Android development, and I'm forcing you and requesting you folks to learn about React Native, but result is gonna be same. You are gonna be able to build Android app itself. So first of all, let's go to the requirements if you are gonna do the Android development. So when you do a web development or competitive programming, you do not the requirements for your machine are not huge. Although these points do not matter when you are working for a company, but since your folks are in college and you have different situations at your end and different power of your laptop. But so if you are trying to pick Android, so you need to have at least i5 8 generation or 7 laptop. The reason is because you have Android client itself, and Android code base, and you would compile that code, and you need to use emulator as well. Although you can bypass the emulator thing by using your personal device, but these are the effort you're gonna need. And there's a very popular meme in the dev community as well about using Android Studio along with Chrome. So can you see the meme on the screen? So this meme tells you that when you run Android Studio with emulator on your same laptop, your laptop is legit burning. Okay, so moving on. Let's just assume you folks are interested in Android development, and then we'll just introduce. The very first step is you need to be aware of programming, and not just programming. When you are doing competitive programming, the only idea which comes in our head is to pass the test cases and get the code running, which is not the case when you are working at a project level thing, and that too when you are working at a company where the code base is huge and optimizations are very important. So meanwhile you are learning programming, it doesn't matter which language you pick, because eventually if you learn one language, it will hardly take any time to learn another language. So command yourself in one of the languages, and try to while writing code, try to imbibe the object oriented programming concepts like polymorphism, inheritance, and all. So because these are what are going to make your code very clean, readable, and optimizations as well, which is the most important thing. So once you're done with programming, coming to the IDEs, which is the platform where you are gonna code. So apparently you have two options: Android Studio or IntelliJ. The thing with IntelliJ is that it does tons of things, and Android development is one of those things. So it's not specific to Android development, so you might miss out on a few tools which are readily available on Android Studio and pretty awesome and make your job much easier compared to that IntelliJ. And this is the same Android Studio we talked about in the meme. That this is something which takes a hell lot of memory and your processing power and for your laptop. So once you are done with the setup of Android Studio, which is fairly easy and you will find fair amount of documentation on that, next things would be to learn about the concepts of Android. So there are different things in Android. For example, one is UI layer. UI layer is basically what the user sees, and these are called layouts. and the way you manage these layouts are called activities. These would be like details of the Android development, which we can cover in another session where we'll be able to build a to-do app from scratch on the session itself. And then more about the activities, services, broadcast receivers, content providers. These are all within your app, and these are various communications by your app to the system, to the Android system. For example, let's say you want to set up a reminder. So you cannot just trigger a reminder from your app. You need to take permissions from the Android operating system itself, and then your reminder pops up even when your app is in the background. These are very specific to Android development, and the best resources for this is, so I never recommend anybody to buy a course or like spend money on resources like courses about these development and all, because in these times data is the easiest thing to find and YouTube is best thing to learn. And if you want to go in details of things, go through the Android's documentation. It's probably the best. So okay, so once you are done with the basic Android components, next comes is data storages. So in Android, there are two types of data storage. Of course, one data storage is like on the cloud storage, where uh, nothing on the Android ends, no resources from Android ends are needed. For example, all your data is stored on the cloud, and you just access it via APIs. But the other thing would be shared preferences. So you would have noticed ki, let's talk about Instagram. So when you use Instagram, let's say you scroll and you have these feeds and all, and then you kill the app and you turn off the internet and you relaunch the Instagram, you do not see that your Instagram feed is empty. You see the feed which you have already seen, but there's some feed at least. So where is that stored? Since there's no internet connection, where does those posts come from? So those posts are stored in the shared preferences and SQLite databases of the Android app itself. So this is why you'd see that Facebook app and the Instagram app grow very large in terms of sizes when you check the size of the app on your Android Go. So if you are comfortable, like if you reach this point, the fourth point about storage, if you are good until this point, so you can create a very decent app which is not connected to the internet but can do a lot of things. For example, a calculator and accessing the galleries and all. So, but we are not yet communicating to the internet. So for that, next thing comes up is the networking. So if you are done with the Android basic Android things like activities and what are the components of Android, next would be internet and using the network. For example, when you talk about YouTube, so YouTube had huge videos, right? You cannot store all those videos on your personal device, and even Android operating system would not allow you to consume so much of space. So this is where cloud storage comes up. So what happens is most of the all of the YouTube's data is stored on a cloud, and then in your app, if you want to access that data, you need to make some API calls, and depending on what a database you have set up and what type of database you set up, these are called HTTP requests and REST APIs to get the data, fetch the data. Even if you are authenticating to a different account, that would be done via internet itself. So this would make your app completely functional and connected to the internet as well. So, yeah. So besides these are the important aspects of Android development, and one of the most important thing is debugging and testing, because though in your college one or two people will be working on the code base, but since when your project grows, when your code bases become huge, different people will be working on different items and people will be coming and going. So how do you know that if something breaks, where do you find it? So debugging is a great skill. Even let's say you folks are good at computer programming, so what's the way to do debugging? So you usually put logs. Okay, if you hit this point, you put the log. And so debugging itself is very awesome in Android Studio, because it allows you to put several debug points where if the code pointer reaches that point, the code automatically stops, the app stops, the thread itself stops. Although that's a different story, that you should never stop a thread and rather use logs to debug the app. And after the 6 point is done, your application is actually ready, but it cannot be shared. So the I did not mention it here, but the next step would be to launch it on the Play Store. And when you launch it on the Play Store, it has a different story altogether, because when you are launching on the Play Store, it wants you to it wants your app to reach to different people, different locales, different countries, and for that you need to introduce different locales to your app. For example, if something's written in English and some user is in a country where, let's say, Hindi is popular and he wants to see his or her content in Hindi, so you'll have to configure for that as well. And then besides that, there comes different. So that's why I did not mention the seventh point here about launching on the Play Store, because it has a lot of formalities which we as college students never focus on and never imagine as well. Because let's say EUDB is European Data Boundary. So apparently, countries in European Union do not want their data to be shared with countries outside of European Union. So these are the different problems you're gonna face when you launch your app to a different scale. So this was a very quick overview of the items we're gonna do, uh, and this is what I've prepared, because we'll mostly do the questionnaire post this. And if you folks want me to build an app right in the session, it's gonna take some time, like 2 or 2.5 hours, but we can make a to-do app itself, and we will definitely not gonna be able to launch it on the Play Store because of the license checks, but we can make in a different session. So that's it from my end, folks, about the Android development. So yeah, over to you, folks.
It was a nice roadmap, sir. We learned about a lot of things, that how to start and what are the problems that where we get stuck, and all about the data sharing and launching on the Play Store. We also get to know about the UDP, and we also know about the what are the problems we face if we launch on Play Store, because it's a totally different story. We see that the people from different country have different requirements regarding a particular app, like the language restriction and all other. So moving forward, we will have some bunch of questions we would like to answer you. So first
Uh,
question that comes to
Sujit,
our mind is, yes,
Sujit, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to make a thing clear with the college students, because I just wanted to highlight one problem which I face in my college,
yes, sir.
which nobody told me, and I wanted to tell if somebody asks me next time, I always try to tell them that
Yes, please.
you. So even when I'm introduced here, I was not said I'm a professional Android developer. I was told to be a software engineer, right? The idea behind software engineer is for 10 days you are doing Android development, but on the 11th day, if some requirement comes and you need to switch your tech stack, let's say you move to Angular. So as a software engineer, it's assumed that you are comfortable with that change, right? It's not you cannot say I'm an Android developer and I want to work on Android. No, because if you want to be a software engineer, you need to be comfortable with all of the tech stacks. So this was one thing, and another thing which I faced in college in the first year, I I started working on Angular. I did some projects there, and in the second year, I did Android development. Did two projects there, but I never found Android comfortable with me. And in the third year, I started doing React, and that was React was something I like really liked and did a lot of projects there. So in the meanwhile, I did. So you might have noticed that I did these several tech stacks at different point of my life, different point of my college journey, which I regret, because if you ask me, I only recommend do competitive programming to a certain level, because the graph of competitive programming is like a parabola. Okay, you grow initially, the rate of change is very high initially, but at some point you realize you are not growing as much as you would expect yourself. For example, let's say code forces, you start with 1100 rating, and in the next month you are 1300, in the next month you are 1500, but once you are, let's say, 1700, the changes are very subtle. You hardly progress like 10 points, 20 points. So so I would recommend to students who are starting afresh do competitive programming until you reach that point where you feel okay, I've done a lot of competitive programming and now the growth is slow. Then move to development phase and pick one tech stack, preferably React. I'll tell you why. Because pick one stack and do tons of project on that tech stack. For example, React. And why I'm suggesting React is if you learn React, you will be able to create websites like the traditional websites on web browsers. And then, so using the same knowledge of the tech stack React, you'll also be able to create Android apps in the React Native, and same React Native code base can also be used in the iOS clients. And if you want to create a Windows apps, so Windows apps are itself moving to WebView. WebView is basically you give a frame to the screen and you launch all the web content on that. For example, it's like a website is being loaded on your app itself. So to the students who are just starting afresh, I would recommend pick React, and then once you are comfortable with React, you'll automatically be able to make Android apps and iOS apps with very minimal effort. So this is one thing. Stick to one stack rather than jumping onto different stacks. Stick to one stack. Do tons of projects on those. And projects are the real testimony of yours. Ki what nobody, if you write on your resume ki I've done this and this and this, nobody's gonna believe that unless you show them those projects. And if you have copied those projects, the industry leaders are like qualified enough to figure out ki if it's your project or not. So if you have made your projects on your own, for example, uh, in one of my Microsoft interviews, uh, like the interviewer directly asked ki show me this project, and I showed that project. It was a really trash project, but the idea behind the project was very awesome. I actually created a portal for my complaint portal for my college students to bridge the gap between college authorities and students. The UI was like legit dumb. It was React based, and because I never believed कि I will be able to be a good person in terms of UI, and it's ironic that in Microsoft I'm doing UI itself. So the idea behind your project should be genuine, and if you do the project on your own, the problems you face will be legit. And if any day somebody asks you the problem, you know कि since I've done this, so I know the answer to the question. So to summarize, stick to one tech stack and do projects on that tech stack. And that's it. And that one tech stack preferably should be React. Okay, sorry for taking your time, but you can
Yes.
move ahead.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So here React refers to React Native, not the React from web development, right, sir?
Sorry.
So here you mentioned React, no, for development. So here React refers to React Native and not the React in which you use in web development.
Exactly. So the React Native and the code when you write code for React Native and when you write code for React web development, it's actually same. But like very minimal differences, but it's actually same. So the at least the design would be same. Design as in engineering design. The flows of different items, how you sync things, those will be same. Yeah. So essentially, you are learning one tech stack, which is React, and then with very minimal effort, comparatively, if you want to do other things different ways, with very minimal effort, you will be able to switch to all the text. So this is the idea behind Microsoft To Do, right? What we did was ki, uh, since I told you we had different teams for different clients, but since the idea was ki, since we are not generating any revenue because To Do is itself Microsoft To Do is free until now. So why are we wasting so much of resource and not generating any revenue? So this is the new strategy we got ki move everybody to React, like move all the apps to React because we have a web app, we have a Windows client, we have a iOS client, we have an Android client. So if everybody moves to React, so we are gonna write one piece of code and then that 80 or 85% of that code is gonna be able to run on all the clients. So this is a strategy. So you like before what used to happen earlier, what used to happen like let's just Sajid, you used to write code on Android, so it would only work on Android, right? But now you write code for Android, it will also work on iOS. You can also make that same code with very little effort to work on Windows PWA app because it's using WebView, and of course you can use the same code on the web itself. Should read about it and go through things like this, so you'll be very clear about it. Yeah.
Yes, yes, sure, sir. Learners will, of course, go and learn about it. Our next question is what similar to what you just expressed and explained about that. So, where you have the question that what are the texts that you work upon and what are the merits and demerits you found? What you think that it should be improved in that category?
Uh, I just mentioned it, right? In the first year, I did the Angular. I hated Angular like to the core of myself because I matlab, it's just not object-oriented programming. I feel like this. Maybe I was wrong, but this is what I felt. And in the second year, I did Android development. I did not like Android development that back then as well. Uh, if you ask me the most hated tech stack, if somebody asks me an option, what's the most hated tech stack you worked on when I graduated from college, I would say Android because I hated it to my core. One reason was I did not have the resources, the laptop was powerful. And then in the third year, I worked on React, and because I was home, and once I had the PPU offer from Microsoft, I started working on artificial intelligence and machine learning. So these are the techs I worked on, and this is the biggest mistake you are gonna make. So do not do multi. It's like jack of all trades is master of none. So you should stick to your one tech stack and then do projects on that. And if it's React, luckily, so you'll be able to make cross clients applications and yeah, your projects.
Okay, sir. We have one more question that we will talk about. So we have seen that a lot of times we find that companies or the lot of companies invest a lot of resources for the development of just UI. So do you
Hmm.
think that investing so much of resources for get better user experience, but which can be done by in a general way also, but we companies invest a lot of money and resources. Also, there are human potential and the human resources to develop a much better and improved AI. So can you explain me that what to up to what extent design play an important role in Android development?
Actually, design plays probably the most important part. It's not just limited to the scope of Android development, but if you're in college, design is gonna matter very less because you just want to get your projects done. But at your since you asked about the company level, what happens is you are not the only player in the market, right? There are several. You have one product, and you'll have several competitors to that product, right? So let's say to-do app. So there are 10 of to-do apps, and a user comes in and he wants to use a to-do list making app. So when the user sees the thing, what would he or she think? He's not gonna be. It doesn't matter if which company made the app or what's the background architecture of the app. The user is gonna see भाई ये वाली ऐप मुझे बहुत सुंदर लग रही है and I find it very intuitive and very convenient to use, and it has though less features, but I do not need a lot of features. I just need to make me my list and get those reminders done. So at company level, UI is probably the most important thing because when you attract users, users only see the UI, and the more clean it is, the more awesome it is for the user to use it. So we had this one review in our Play Store about in to do itself. So they said कि even though there are a lot of apps in the market which offer a lot of different features, but to do is a very list making is a very niche thing to do. Guess what? Because who- it's by the way it's very only people who are very specific and to their productivity. These are the folks who use to do apps, right? And most of those people themselves use paper and pen. That's the most convenient thing. And when those users try to use a digital app for their list making, they want it to be very simple as paper and pen. So that is why the strategy in our to do apps is ki make it as simple as possible because people for simplicity. It's a very niche product. Very people who are very you know uh, attentive to their productivity, they use the to do apps and they want it simple. So UI is actually very important at company level. Probably the most important thing. It doesn't matter what how good engineering you are at how good your engineering was, but if the UI is not clean and very intuitive, it's not gonna work.
Yes, we got that, sir, about the clean UI. Sir, one question that arises upon this that we have in mind that when we develop some project as a student, we develop some projects, we some develop make some apps or websites. We try to implement some fancy animation effects or designs, like there are different kind of animations and different kind of effects on each and every part. But when we go for some professional website, we don't find these things. We find the things very easy and they are very clean. Just like recently we have a very big software, ChatGPT, whose UI is very clean and very simple. So what's your say on that? What's the reason behind that the companies do not implement such a fancy and attractive UI?
Uh, there are different angles to it. One is key. So when we are in college, we can use a very fancy UI, right? Because what's the maximum daily active usage you're gonna hit? College, your college strength, and for any application, 1,000 or 2,000 hits is nothing. But when you have users in millions, so they are gonna, if millions of users use the app, and your app should not break, like that's the condition. Like the more fancy the UI is, the more load it's gonna put on the architecture, on the operating system, or whatever you use. Overall, the app will be very heavy. So that's why companies prefer. So there are two. You can either have a very fancy UI, but it's gonna break at some point when number of users are high, or you can have a very simple and clean UI, but it's gonna work at any point of time at any number of hits. So this is the idea behind it. So and the reason why you see कि Chat GPT itself is such simple, right? You just see a dialog boxes and you can only put some text there. It's a chat itself. Still, the reports came that it used to broke, like because of the user load, it used to
Yes.
break off and time out the servers, right? So that was again a reason, because even though the app was so simple, still because of the heavy usage of the app, it broke. Like it used to get disconnected from the internet or break or whatever. So that's the idea behind it. And think about from yourself, like what are you expecting from ChatGPT? You put your questions, and the only thing which matters to you is your answers,
Quick
right? You get
response.
your answers right, and your responses come very quickly. it so does it bother you that okay, इसमें तो flower नहीं है, यहाँ पे फूल नहीं है, यहाँ पे मेरे को वो पटाखे वाली animations नहीं आ रहे? No, it doesn't matter. You just get your answers, and you won't believe, because ChatGPT is something sort of a way. Microsoft has a huge investment in ChatGPT itself, so we are able to get those insights. Ki what's happening? ChatGPT is itself changing user behavior. Before ChatGPT, what you used to think ki in search nobody can beat Google. Google legit owns 90% of the search results, right? 90% of people search on Google. But with the introduction, and people used to feel कि search में there's no scope, there's no change because Google is the monopoly. But with the introduction of Chat GPT, we all realized कि okay, this is the new way of searching. पहले क्या होता था? You put the query on the bar and then you go to several links and तुम्हें ये नहीं पता कि which link is which. And different companies use search engine optimizations, SEO optimizations to get those links to the top. Even though the content is not top tier, but their website link is on the top. ठीक है? So this would create you go through different websites. But ChatGPT has changed user behavior in the sense that now it gets you the answers directly. You write the query, you get the answer. And even though it's failing for some cases, if it's not failing for coding cases, like I personally use ChatGPT. I just ask it, for example, if I want to do some SQL query on the database, I just tell the ChatGPT ki, this is the table, these are the parameters, write a query to filter out these parameters. It just give me the query, okay? And if you do the same thing on the internet, on the Google, you'll get several links. Some would add to something else, some would add to something else, and you'll have to read all those and then build your what you want, and you need to extract that out of it. But with ChatGPT, you get the direct answers. So that's a altogether a different blow to Google. That's why these the rumors were कि Google is at high alert कि we need to tackle ChatGPT and stuff. So they introduced their Bard chatbot. Yeah.
Yes, it was a nice explanation. We are full satisfied with what you told just now. Sir, recently we see mass layoffs in the multiple
हाँ.
companies. So if means big professionals, very brilliant one, the highly experienced, they also got fired from the
Hmm.
companies within just through just a single email. So when the when any aspirant is trying to take Android as a career, so can you explain the scope of Android development in future?
Okay. So you'll realize कि future is mobile first. Okay. So let's say you are walking on a road, something comes up your head. You do not pull out your laptop, even though you have a laptop. You do not pull out your laptop and search for it. No, you just pick out your mobile and just search for it. So, if you ask me the scope of Android development, it's the only scope you have in coming days. As long as we do not enter the metaverse and everything is your like in your glasses, and that's a very distant dream, by the way. So, mobile first is the future, and Android development is gonna be in state. matlab, it is gonna be in the future. And addressing the first part of your question, which is mass layoffs. So, I would recommend do not target a company and then learn stuff around that company. Do not aim ki I want to go to Microsoft, so I'll do only problems which are asked in Microsoft. No, work on yourself. Take take a tech stack. Let's say if you're developing, take a tech stack, do several good projects on that. So the idea is ki even though layoffs are on, layoffs, if you are good at your work, nobody is gonna lay off, and even if you are laid off, somebody is gonna realize your value and you will be rehired immediately. So do not associate, first of all, do not associate yourself with a company. Associate yourself with yourself. Believe in yourself ki you are good at your stuff. So no matter if my company fires me tomorrow, I'll just do my something of my own or do join a different company because I am capable, because I have my knowledge and I have done these things. So enhance your value instead of looking out for different opportunities, and do not treat companies, oh my god, this is a fan company. No, see, be interested in the work you're gonna do. So, personally, to me, it's less of importance to me that I'm working at Microsoft, and it's more important to me ki am I doing something valuable working at Microsoft? Because there would be a chance when you are working on a XYZ company, even though the XYZ company is a very reputed and a very very good company with a lot of perks. But if you are not doing anything worthwhile, matlab, worth there, so you are not going personally, right? So let's say the company keeps you for 2 years, and then since you have not done anything worth, and you yourself haven't learned anything because you were not doing anything worth, you are gonna anyways be fired 2 years later. And what will be in your hand? That you were ex-employee of this company, but nothing in terms of experience because you did not do anything. So focus on the work you are going to do and focus on your skills, enhancing your skills. This is the one of the biggest, I think, learnings we should take from these layoffs because see, be it Fang or be it any small company, everybody had layoffs, right? Nobody was spared. A lot of my friends who got laid. I'm not going to name the companies, but a lot of my friends, we all passed out from the same batch, and now they are fired. But those who were very good at their college and their work, and who were very dedicated to their work, they they rejoined another companies like within 2 months. So because they had their value, right? The companies realized those values. Ki, yes, this person is gonna bring this to this table. So your worth is what work you do and how good you are at your work.
So basically, it's about contribution and learning new things when you got industry, not about not
Yes.
thinking much about the things like what are the perks you are giving. We
Yes.
should, in the terms of your words, we can say that it's more like going to a company where we got more hands-on experience and we can
Yes.
contribute more to the development of companies and ourselves as well, rather than starting with a company with more perks where we will probably or may not be having much to do or much contributions to do, right, sir?
So, so that is why one recommendation is always to, so people go to different companies ki okay, this company is this, and इनका work culture बहुत अच्छा है. They only work for 2 or 3 hours and they have all these perks in their office. But no, since you are a fresher, you should always be ready to hustle, right? You should be able to, because when you are fresher, you have no liabilities. You do not have a family to support. Family, you have a family to support financially, but nothing like your kids are not gonna come to you and say ki let's go out this weekend, वगैरह वगैरह. So when you are young, when you are these early days of your career, try to join a startup because startups are gonna put you under pressure like very hard. Or join a company, do work where things are moving really fast and you get to do a lot of things. That is more important.
Yes.
And
Yes, sir, please
and
continue, sir.
and by and we the companies generally tend to attract you with high paychecks. So please don't fall for paychecks in early part of your life. You might be paid really well for the first 2 years, but if you do not contribute much and you do not learn much, the next 3 years gonna be numb. So even though you join a company which is not paying you as per your expectations, but you are learning a lot, that is a more preferable idea when early phase of your life, and that too for college students specifically.
Yes. So whenever we start something, we have bunch of options. Like
Hmm.
if you go for, suppose if you go for DSA, also there are a lot of platforms. So as a newbie, we don't have much idea. We talk to our friends, we talk to some of our seniors. Some suggested that X website is preferred, some Y, some Z, some. And so due to what happens, we are just stuck up and mesmerized the things that we are not able to get, and we are not clear about where to start actually. So also in the when you talk about Android, we have multiple platforms. One of which includes like Kotlin, which is a native platform. Then we have Java, and for hybrid platform we have Flutter. So what one should start with, and why one, what one should be preferred? Which one should be preferred? You think, and why?
Uh, so let's just cut Flutter out because I just said कि I have very little experience about Flutter. And regarding Kotlin and Java, so as I mentioned earlier as well, कि languages are not a barrier. You so every new language which comes up is an optimization of the previous language. For example, uh, most of the native Android development these days is being done on Kotlin. The reason, and when you compare Kotlin to C++, there's a lot of gap in terms of you might have, for example, if you folks have worked on C or C++, you would have heard this malloc and calloc memory allocation
Yes, sir.
and the new keyword in the C++.
Yes.
You do not see anything in the Kotlin. And I personally have never seen something like memory management in the code base of my company production code base, right? The reason is very clear because Kotlin is built considering the flaws of previous languages. Garbage cleaning, for example, this the when you assign a memory using malloc or calloc and then you delete that memory when your work is done, that is called garbage cleaning. But all these new apps, new languages like Kotlin, they are built considering these and they automatically clear those, like garbage cleaning automatically happens. So I'm not saying that you should not learn the fundamentals, but these are the differences. So anything new which comes up is fine. मतलब, I'd prefer that. So if you are doing native Android development, so you'd be working on. I'd suggest to work on Kotlin because Google has invested very heavily on Kotlin to make Kotlin's longevity and to move over Java. Although there's a different reason as well because Java is like open source by Oracle and they'll probably there's some rumor going on कि they might just not open source it and try to sell it. So that was one thing. And what was the other question? Sorry, it missed my head.
Sir, which should you prefer? What should be the reason behind preferring any of them?
So if you are doing native Android development, which I actually suggested not to do. So even though if you want to do it, to do it in Kotlin, and if you are doing React or React Native, so React, most of the React websites are based on JavaScript, but there's this new language called TypeScript, which types checks your variables. You should matlab, go to the internet to learn about it. Type checking is helpful when you moving your data from different class to class to class using inheritance and वगैरह. So React. So basically, it's not React JS. Try to do it React TS TypeScript. And all the modern courses we're going to learn, they are built upon React TypeScript itself.
Okay, sir, we talked about the roadmap, we talked about UI development, we talked about role of UI and scope of development. Now, one of the most important questions that arises is we did all of these things, we developed our UI and all. So, where should we store our data? So, which platform you use to store data and why?
So at the company level, we use Azure to store our data. But since uh, As students as well, you can use Azure as well, because I think this is a very specific question, and an answer will be as lame as the college student types. So even on the Azure, when you log in, you get those $300 as credits, where you can use those credit points to store data. It will be free of cost. You can use those credits to buy a database, SQL database, and create the API for the same on the Azure platform itself. But when I was in college, I used to use Firebase. It's Google's, and even then the college, I'm not sure if it's still available or not, and what's the
Yes, it's
new
available.
conditions. Okay.
Firebase is available,
So
sir. We use Firebase.
yeah, so that's awesome because Fire it's very convenient. इतनी simple उसका documentation है. It's so easy to use and so easy to integrate कि at college level I'd prefer Firebase. But when you want to scale your product मतलब you are aiming for millions of users to use a product. So that's when this decision has to be very conscious and not just based on free credit points. कि which platform offers more scalability. For example, Azure and AWS are ultra scalable. मतलब there's nothing beyond those.
So there is one question coming from audience that is mentioned that sir, newbie should learn Android development as first stack, or we should do after getting experience in web or DSA. Basically, person
Hmm.
wants to ask that we should where we should start with. We should start with Android, or we should start with DSA and web.
Okay, this is a very critical question, and I think there's no right answer to this question because there you'll always find an audience which is inclined to DSA. They do DSA throughout their career, like throughout their college, and there's this one audience which do not get comfortable with DSA, but they do development throughout their college. So I personally feel DSA is very important, especially although it's not much used when because problem solving you do not we do not create trees, we do not create graphs on our own because these, as I mentioned, these languages have so many tools which are already so optimized. You do not have to create them on your own. But the skill of problem solving is important, even though at company level it's not much used. But if you want to join a company, the only criteria is DSA. They might skip development, but DSA is never skipped. The idea behind this is ki, as I mentioned, ki you are a software engineer, not an Android. You are not considered an Android development or a web developer. You are considered a software engineer. So when it comes to software engineering, it is expected ki even though you have worked 2 years of your life on Android, and let's say a situation comes up where you need to work upon web development, let's say React or any other platform. So it's assumed कि you will agree and you will be comfortable with switching the context and switching your tech stack because you're a software engineer. So that's why I had. So you that's why you will realize in most of the hiring processes they focus specifically on DSA because DSA is going to be constant. If you are good at DSA, it means कि you have command over language. You are good at problem solving. So DSA is so the right answer to that question to the person who asked that question is कि if you're in first year, start with DSA, thoda thoda. And as I said, at some point you realize कि you are not growing as fast as you used to grow in the early days of your DSA. ठीक है? That's the point you drop your attention to DSA. Drop as in not completely zero. Like for example, let's say you used to do 15 questions a day when you were doing a completely DSA. But now just keep a check, like keep doing problems like one or two problems every day and start doing development. And when it comes to development, so again, this is a choice, but if you are my brother or sister, and given the experience I have, I would recommend go the React route, learn React, TypeScript or React JS, build websites, and then you'll automatically be able to switch to React Native and build apps for iPhone or Android client. So essentially, the answer to the question is ki do both of things. If you are in first year and you are starting early, do some DSA. And when you realize ki okay, I've done enough DSA, I'm good at this, I'm decent at this, I do not need to reach Code Forces Grandmaster. That's fine. So pull the levers down there, drop the gears there, and start developing there. Start the development because it will give you immense And trust me, if you by the end of third year, if you do this, follow this chart, you did DSA for some part, early part of your college journey, and then started developing websites and all. So your resume is gonna look so beautiful, and if all the things you mentioned in your resume are legit, there's nobody stopping you from getting hired. And you might be
Yes.
rejected in one or two interview, but you'll always find better opportunities.
I think it was one of the most critical and most arising question that has been solved just now. Because whenever we started in our first year, we have a lot of queries in our mind that what to start, how to start, which should we go DSA, which should we go with development, or we should move simultaneously with both of the things. But the way you explained, it was fabulous. It was very clear and it was very niche. So moving forward, now I would like to invite Srijan Shovit sir to take forward the session. Srijan Shovit sir, hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sajid. Okay, so one more question we have from the audience. It is a general rumor that in the industry only experienced app developers are hired. So is it actually true, or is it false? Like they actually focus on software developers rather than app developers. So
So I think this narrative is, I would say, this is very false. Ki only experienced developers are hired. So look at like my case is the perfect example for this. For the past year, I've only worked on native Android client, right? I worked on Kotlin, I worked on Java, and I built apps only for the Android client. But I am told that next quarter on, for example, like next quarter, we divide the year into quarters, and three
mm,
months is one quarter. And I am told, like I have been told very clearly that from next quarter on, you will be working on React. So
okay,
even though I have the experience I have working on this Android client, I will be working on React, and that would be a new tech stack which I worked on. So if somebody, and there's some college guy who comes up and he joins the company, and he or she is directly starting from React. So so where's my experience gone? Like, of course, we both are on the same level, right? Ki React, I'm doing like he's starting with React, and I will also be starting with React. So this example defies the case that only experienced folks are hired. Again, the idea is again the same. Ki be foolish and be willing to learn. Try to keep learning. Your learning should never stop. So tomorrow, okay, comparing myself, let's say the new guy came up and he started with React and I will be starting with React. So if we encounter a problem, he or she might panic, but I won't, because I have faced similar kind of problems on a different on a different tech stack, on a different language, but the problems are same, right? The pressure is same. I'll be able to very easily cope up with the pressure, not the other guy. So if you are good at so even if you are good at your thing at college level, it does not matter ki if somebody, because if I hire you, if I want to hire A or if I want to hire B, I'll only see ki who is more willing to contribute and who is more up to the task, rather than ki he's more experienced. What is experience? If you haven't done anything, what's experience? It's nothing. So just be willing and keep doing stuff. And to be honest, we all came from JE, right? And we are sort of used to very hustling. Ki matlab, we are used to work like din raat. So if if even, let's say, 20%, 25% of that behavior you carry on to your college, that hustle, if you could carry only 25% of that hustle to your college, by the end of your fourth year, there would be no one competing with you. Matlab, you'd be so far off, so better at the thing. Just keep things rolling, even though slowly, but just keep things rolling. Do not quit on thing. Do not think like कि एक महीने ब्रेक लेते हैं and then उसके बाद मैं उठा लूंगा, नहीं. Do not. Keep doing stuff, and do not do multiple things in parallel, because as I mentioned, jack of all trades is master of none. Pick one tech stack, learn about it, make one project, make two projects, make three projects, and that's the testimony. Your projects are a testimony that you are so awesome at your projects, at this tech stack. So, yeah,
so basically the projects can also tell that we are experienced in that particular tech stack. So
exactly,
not
exactly.
it's not necessary that we work at a company to get experience. We can have some open source projects or group projects also.
Exactly. So I'll give you an example. So there's this one relative of mine who came to me and he wanted me to create a website about his new business idea. And I
Mm,
was so busy. Even up now, I was so busy. Now he's expecting because I'm experienced, I will be able to make the website. But what I did was I went to my college juniors and I asked them किसको भाई ये चीज़ें आती हैं किसको React JS TypeScript आता है and then
mhm,
I just check their projects कि हाँ इसने ये चीज़ करी and this is what I need. My need is to मुझे ये चीज़ बनानी है and I checked कि project हाँ इसने ये चीज़ करी है and then I said कि भाई देखिए this is your task and जाओ make the website. So it's just fine मतलब if you have done your things, you cannot be shadowed. You'll always front lead. And as in this example, you would see मैंने उस बंदे से सिर्फ उसके projects मांगे. I don't care कि what's his SGPA, what's इसने कितना DSC किया मैंने नहीं. अगर ये projects तूने खुद से किए हैं तो मतलब तेरे को ये चीज़ आती है मुझे यही चीज़ चाहिए तो तू कर दे जा.
mm,
That's the that's the viewpoint for this.
okay. So next up, some technical doubts. Like you mentioned, shared preferences, that word
हम्म.
in your text. So that is something related to cache storage
हाँ
or
जी.
something else. Cache storage. Okay.
Uh,
And yes, sir, continue.
नहीं नहीं बोल
Please
बोल.
continue. Okay.
Got it right.
Any particular design pattern or architecture pattern, like we have heard about MVVC, MVVM or MVC. So any particular design pattern which you personally like, or in industry it is followed like almost in the 90% of cases. Any such thing?
See, so these are the I would say these are the approaches. So when you think about these approaches, MVC or MVVM, when you are building something, you do not think about कि I'll do it MVC way or I'll do it MVVM way. You do it on your own way, and then you realize कि okay, you did it your like it's either gonna fall it in one category or other category. So there's no thing, and it also depends on the like what product you are building. So if let's say for example to do app to do app does not have any images or huge videos, it's just tasks. So
Mm,
we can have a separate boundaries between data and the UI layer, and there's no intermediate layer. There's no intermediate layer where I want to store that data so that quick access of that data because text data fetching that text data is very easy. But
mm,
on the other hand, when you talk about Instagram, so
mm,
Instagram is something you cannot do real time fetch and then show the user because that would lead to lag. So what
mm,
Instagram does is it already like makes a call to get 10 posts even though user is only seeing first post, it already has next 10 posts ready for the user already fetched from the server. So these are the two examples and uh, e- even if you're in college, do not bother about the MVC or MVVM. These are just jargons. They don't matter if you're in college. And when you reach a company, like for example, the way I'm working, I have never heard ki people talk like ki we're gonna do it MVC way or MVVM way. They just think ki okay, this is the requirement, and this is how we're gonna do it. So nobody talks about MVC or MVVM. It depends on the requirement. And apps do not apps or websites are not built considering MVC or MVVM. They see the need. You would see in the same app, let's say Amazon, for some things MVC is going to be followed, and for some things MVVM is going to be followed. And trust me, while building those architectures, nobody considered कि we are going to do it MVC or MVVM way. So these are just dark jargons. So do it your way, I would recommend. And it's anyways going to fall in one of the other categories.
okay. So that was all related to the technical doubts. And anything you would like to tell about your experience in the IT industry?
Yeah, I haven't had much, matlab, from the context of the question, but I would just share my things. कि, uh, when when I graduated from college, I had like three offers in my hand. One
Okay.
was startup. Uh, One was so I did not consider even, but two were very competing offers. One was Microsoft, other was one startup. So I always wanted to go in a startup because आई न्यू कि मुझे ऐसे कंफर्टेबल सा नहीं चाहिए, बिकॉज अभी उम्र ही नहीं है कंफर्टेबल होने की, ठीक है। दिस इज योर एज वेर यू हसल,
challenge
यू नो।
every day.
हाँ, स्टे हंग्री स्टे फुलिश वाली बात। तो आई वांटेड टू गो इन द स्टार्टअप, बट द प्रॉब्लम विद दैट स्टार्टअप वाज कि it was fully remote, like you had to work from home all the time.
Okay.
This
Okay.
is something I did not want, because
Mm-hmm.
to me what was very important was ki I need to interact with new people with similar ideas who want to. So when you
Exactly.
are sitting, in a group of people who are same as your mindset, who have same mindset as yours, so they
Mm-hmm.
discuss ideas instead of
Yeah.
trash. But when you are
Yeah.
home, you just stick to your work and not, and do not interact with people. So at this phase, to the, and this we had a common, you know, common thought about in our head about Microsoft, that it's a very comfortable company, very बड़े प्यार से काम कराते हैं, ज़्यादा लोड नहीं होता. But under the new leadership, things have changed. We are actually moving very fast. I do not know if you folks follow these technical knowledge on technical movements or not, but Microsoft ने पिछले ही कुछ, like within 2 or 3 months, they have legit injected AI into all of their products. मतलब इतना fast has never been possible. The there's this news came up that Bing hit 100 million users. Like 100 million users is a huge number considering what it used to be before. And the only reason it could happen because they integrated a similar chat GPT like thing, chat option in the Bing itself. So I like most of the Microsoft folks used to use Google for search, but I now personally use Bing because it's so convenient to use the chat feature. Even and so I'll tell you my case. I use Microsoft Edge and not Chrome. I find it very comfortable Edge because it has several features which I like. But this one feature came up where you have this Bing icon on top of your screen, and once you click that Bing icon, you'd see you a chat bar parallel to your screen. You can
Okay.
it's like accessing chat GPT right on the go. कुछ भी डाउट आया फटाक से उस आइकॉन पे क्लिक किया, एंड यू कैन पुट योर क्वेरी राइट इन देयर. So this
Mm-hmm.
actually legit turned my head around. So experience in the IT industry is कि meet new folks who have great ideas and do not settle for less. यार slow काम नहीं करना, मतलब I recommend to everyone कि this is not your age to slow down. जब तुम 30-35 के हो गए, तब try to think about कि okay now I want a simple life. अब भाई आराम से काम करना है और फैमिली पे भी ध्यान देना है, but not at this moment. So hustle culture. और बड़ी cities में बैंगलोर, when you go to हैदराबाद, बैंगलोर, beat Noida as well. So you even when you so this is a legit example of Bangalore. Even if you go to a cafe or restaurant, you'd always find software engineers, and there's there's a different connect with software engineers. वो अपने आप ही बात करने लग जाते हैं. They like
Okay.
कि अरे ये गूगल ने बार्ड निकाला है यार, ये तो ऐसा है वो ऐसा है, चैट जीपीटी है, क्या हम चैट जीपीटी को इसमें डाल सकते हैं वगैरह वगैरह. So these are the when you are in the industry, these are again very important points to focus on. एंड इफ़ यू आर कमिंग विद अ माइंडसेट कि ओके मैं माइक्रोसॉफ्ट में आ गया हूँ, यहाँ तो बड़े प्यार से काम होता है, अब मैं आराम से जीऊँगा, कुछ नहीं करूँगा, मतलब हल्का-फुल्का काम करके ज़िंदगी काटूँगा, तो दैट्स द रॉन्ग अप्रोच, दैट्स द अप्रोच व्हिच गेट्स यू लेड ऑफ वगैरह-वगैरह. तो ये
Mm. Yeah. Okay. So, anything you would like to suggest to our juniors or the audience? One last thing. This one,
यार
especially the
अगेन
one who are Android dev enthusiasts.
सो ओके इफ़ यू आर पहले तो हाँ, इफ़ यू आर ऑलरेडी वर्किंग ऑन एंड्रॉयड डेव, तो लाइक वेरी ऑसम, नो प्रॉब्लम भाई. मोबाइल 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 फर्स्ट इज़ द फ्यूचर. हर कोई बंदा मोबाइल पे ही हर चीज़ करने वाला है, हर चीज़ मोबाइल पे ही होती है. इवन द वेब डेवलपमेंट की जो वेबसाइट्स होती थी वो भी अब मोबाइल पे ही सब खोलते हैं. कोई वेरी रेयरली पीपल को, हम तो सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर्स हैं, कॉलेज इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज है, तो हमारे पास लैपटॉप्स होते हैं, बट बहुत मेजोरिटी के पास नहीं होते हैं.
People use mobile
हाँ,
only. Yeah.
सब मोबाइल यूज़ करते हैं. तो एंड्रॉयड डेव का तो फ्यूचर ही फ्यूचर है. एंड इफ यू इवन अभी जैसे मैंने बहुत एम्फेसाइज किया कि आई एम्फेसाइज लॉट ऑन रिएक्ट नेटिव, इट्स नॉट
Okay.
नेसेसरी. इवन इफ यू आर डूइंग नेटिव क्लाइंट इट्स फाइन, मतलब कोई इशू नहीं है. बट इफ यू आर स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम जीरो, तो आई वुड रिकमेंड गो द रिएक्ट रूट, बट अदरवाइज इट्स फाइन. और कीप जो तुमने जेई के लिए द एनर्जी यू हैड फॉर योर जेई, कीप दैट 25 एटलीस्ट 25% ऑफ दैट एनर्जी अभी थ्रू आउट योर कॉलेज लाइफ। तो तुम्हें इतने ज़्यादा गेन्स मिलेंगे उस चीज़ से, यू वोंट बिलीव। अब ये इट्स डिफिकल्ट बिकॉज कॉलेज लाइफ इज़ वेरी डिफिकल्ट। आई यूज टू रिमेंबर कि इन द अर्ली डेज ऑफ माई कॉलेज यू यूज टू गो आउट इन द मॉर्निंग एंड रात को तुम 1 बजे 12 बजे आते हो, जब तुम्हें सोना होता है कमरे में। तो लेजिट तुम्हारा पूरा दिन निकल गया, तुमने कुछ काम नहीं किया, मतलब वैसा, दिस टाइप ऑफ काम। तो दिस इज वन कॉम्प्रोमाइज यू हैव टू मेक कि ट्राई टू वेक अप अर्ली और स्टार्टिंग के 2-3 घंटे निकाल लो और कर लो, या फिर मतलब मैनेज इट पीछे वही यू वांट। तो कीप 25% ऑफ जेई एनर्जी बचा के रखो। अगर और डीएसए तब तक करना है जब तक तुम्हें मज़ा आ रहा है। जब लग रहा है कि अब मेरी ग्रोथ नहीं हो रही है, डीएसए छोड़ दो, डेवलपमेंट पकड़ लो। एंड डेवलपमेंट अगर ज़ीरो से कर रहे हो तो रिएक्ट से स्टार्ट कर दो। और रिएक्ट अभी काफ़ी टाइम तक चलेगा बिकॉज इट्स हाईली ऑप्टिमाइज्ड, कोई है ही नहीं उसके आसपास। तो रिएक्ट चलेगा। और अगर तुम ऑलरेडी कर चुके हो चीज़ें, करे जा रहे हो, तो करते रहो। और सबसे बड़ी गलती मत करना कि मल्टीपल टेक स्टैक्स में मत हॉप करना, कोई फ़ायदा नहीं होगा। तुम हर चीज़ का थोड़ा थोड़ा जानोगे, उससे कुछ फ़ायदा नहीं है। तुम एक चीज़ के बारे में सब कुछ जानो, वो तुम्हारी पावर बन जाएगी, वो तुम्हारी स्वॉर्ड होगी। या दिस इज इट।
Thanks for answering all the queries. Okay, back to Susajit.
Thank you, Srijan sir. So I would like to take a moment to express my sincerest thanks to our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. Aman Singh sir, for his incredible presentation today. His expertise and insights were truly enlightening, and we are grateful for the opportunity to have learned from them. He not only shared his knowledge and experiences, but also engaged us with their thought-provoking ideas and perspective. His session was informative, engaging, and inspirational, leaving us with new ideas and a great understanding of Android development. I would also like to thank all of you, our audience, for your participation and engagement during the session. Your questions and feedback added to the richness of the discussion, and we appreciate your contributions. Finally, I would like to thank our event organizer, volunteers, our team members whose support made this session possible. We could not have done it without your dedication and hard work. So come us and join us in our biggest hackathon, ByteVerse on a larger scale. And also be ready for tomorrow's session on UI UX by our speaker, Pallavi Srivastava ma'am, who is a product designer and SaaS software expert from 11 a.m. Once again, on behalf of everyone involved in this session, I would like to express our gratitude to Aman Singh sir for sharing his time and expertise with us.
एंड
It was a truly memorable and valuable experience. Thank you and have a great day.
folks, one last thing, if you are hearing, अगर कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम हो, यू कैन रीच आउट टू मी ऑन लिंक्डइन। प्लीज़ यार, शेयर द लिंक जो भी मेरी प्रोफाइल का है। इट्स फाइन, मतलब आई एम नॉट दैट ओल्ड, मैं तुम्हारे सीनियर टाइप्स का ही हूँ। एंड देन आई नो द प्रॉब्लम्स यू वांट टू फेस। कुछ भी प्रॉब्लम है, यू कैन रीच आउट टू मी, बी इट टेक रिलेटेड या फिर गाइडेंस रिलेटेड या फिर कुछ इन जनरल भी, इट्स फाइन। या दैट्स इट।
Yeah, that's very nice, especially for our juniors. Thank you, sir.
ओके, चलो गाइस, बाय बाय।
Bye, sir. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
सेम टू मैन।